Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Perth East Council this 4th day of March. I'd like to call our meeting to order. If everyone could please bow their head for a moment of reflection. Thank you. We have a motion to confirm the agenda, that the agenda as prepared for the March 4th, 2025 meeting of Council of the Township of Perth East be approved as received. Moved by Amanda, second by Bob. All in favor? Carried. If you have pecuniary interest, you can disclose that now or as the meeting goes along. We have 14 items under our consent agenda. Is there any item anyone would like pulled or have any questions? No, Mike does have a couple comments that he would like to make on a couple of the items.
Yeah, just quickly through the mayor, I just wanted to speak briefly about 512. As it relates to 513, this has been a topic that's been ongoing for a couple of years, in particular counties over the last surplus farm service. The trending that I think the planning staff is trying to address with all of the lower tiers, that surplus farm severance initially was limit the size of those severances. Really increased difficult for a number of years. The trends more recently is much larger surplus farm severance. So I think it's an awareness piece for all of us, including the lower tiers. We are a commenting agent on this, so I think it's a dangerous trend. Best efforts to keep them small and allow farms that are surrounding them not to be impacted by these severages. So
Okay, thank you. If there's no one else, Bob?
With regards to Mike's comments on the suggestion that it would be appropriate for the volunteer to make comments so that the planning department of the county is aware of what our concerns are, because you and I had this conversation previously. The way it's going, it's changed dramatically without any change in policy, and even in their document, it states where there should be a minimum, but it seems to be flexing that basis. So, are you asking us to make some comments? I guess.
I think what I'm asking, and I'm not suggesting not to make comments as it relates to the overall report. I think comments as the applications are coming forward with us, is asking the planning staff to consider this size figures on each of those applications. I don't think it's a question, but I'm certainly not suggesting well if this is something restrictions imposed for at least stricter guidelines as it relates to the size of the severances and exceptions drive our severance. I think that's a reasonable approach, but yeah.
Just to add to that, I think that's kind of the expectation from the land division, is they want to know if council is in support or not support, if they think it should be smaller. Because if we don't have anyone not like what's being put forward, it doesn't go to the land division, it goes right through staff. So I think the only way it goes to the land division is someone puts in that they want something a little different. we had one application. I haven't sat on the committee for a few years, but I know we had one with another municipality. The land division committee let it go through, and then the municipality decided the zoning bylaw couldn't go through because they wanted it shrunk, but they didn't tell us that to start with. So I think if you want it shrunk here, then Hugh sits on that committee. Maybe he can back me up. That if we want something done to it, we should be telling you.
Okay, so clarification, why don't we pull that item?
Okay. And all right, so that is 2, 3. I won 3. Okay. Anything else? If not, then we have a motion that items 5.1.1 to 5.1.14 is set out in consent agenda for the March 4, 2025 regular meeting of council be received for information with the exception of 5.1.3, which shall be introduced separately, and the minutes of the February 19, 2025 regular council meeting be adopted. Moved by Jerry, second by Hugh. All in favor? Carried. Okay, and what would you like to do with that one?
Well, I think it's appropriate to highlight the county's policy that the new lot will be limited to a minimum size to accommodate the sewage and water system. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And should be here too. I realize each application is different, but we are seeing people wanting sheds and accessories that are going beyond minimum. I think the last one itself good. That's stretching a bit, so I would suggest that these county should something that the land division county council restrained from original intention.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Amanda?
Yep.
Do you want to maybe read that out and read quick and keep writing it out? I'll let you read it. Bear with us for a minute here. We're getting it. Okay, we'll try. Okay, so the correspondence sent to the Land Division and County Council regarding support for the county policy, including the lot size be limited to size necessary to accommodate well and septic system for the dwelling. That capture it? Okay, Amanda? Yep, okay, any more questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, now we're moving on to presentations, and we have one public presentation tonight. We have with us Matthew Livingston and Justin Dietrich, and they're going to talk about the Coos Dog Parks Steering Committee proposal. So gentlemen, welcome. If you'd like to come to the desk and Push the button, please, to make it, light should come on, and the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for seeing us this evening. Livingstone of Milverton, and with me this evening is Justin Dietrich of Milverton as well. Recently, Justin was here at the end of 2024 to present on our behalf, where we are looking to have the dog park, off-leash dog park, put into the expansion of Greenwood, the Greenwood Park area. We provided you an additional update to that, so we went away, the committee put together some additional thoughts on the project. We also did some community engagement where we went and did a survey and are looking now to come before you tonight to be able to move forward with fundraising if you guys are satisfied with what we've done so far. On the screen there, you'll see the draft plan of the park, and at the top right quadrant, you will see the acre area in which we are looking to put the park into that area. What you'll notice throughout the plan is that we're looking at a phased approach. So phase one is a basic fenced area that will allow for the off-leash dog park and allow for a pathway, some water, some waste disposal, and some benches. Very simplistic, but what we've seen through our review as a committee, as well as our feedback from the community, is that people are interested in having this type of amenity to our residents for socializing their animals as well as themselves. We see that people are looking for an avenue to be able to take out their dogs, have them socialize in an off-leash manner, in a safe environment, which we've devised based on industry standards, and be able to congregate in that area and be able to benefit from that exercise, both themselves and their animals. So we've taken into consideration both people walking to the park as well as driving to the park. We do have some parking that we've put into our consideration that will allow for a few spots to be added to that area. And as well, we've looked at the AODA and are going to work through to make sure that all the pathways and the design are compliant with all the regulations. So we did get feedback from over 60 people on our survey. The survey did come back very positive. Of course, we had a few people respond that were not interested in having a dog park within the community, but that's to be expected, and we appreciate them taking the time to provide us with that feedback. But over the majority of those people that did respond are in favor of having the dog park brought forward. So we're here, as I mentioned, to be able to answer any questions about the package you received from us and to look for any support that you're able to give us or approval to give us to move forward to that next phase. And that next phase is to allow us with fundraising. From March until September, we want to work through our fundraising plan, which we've highlighted, and then be able to work towards a development phase in late September, which would allow for the grass to take and root and be ready in early spring for us to open up, as long as we're able to meet all of our funding requirements. I'd like to open up for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions of the presenters? Amanda?
Great interest from a number of community groups in Greenwood Park. I know that in the map that you provided, you had sort of identified the ideal spot of where you would like to have it. And I'm not sure if it's in conflict with any of the other groups that are also wanting space within Greenwood Park. I just was hoping, I'm not sure, not to put staff on the spot, but I don't know if we have any clarity regarding that, just in terms of, compatibility and ensuring that we're trying to accommodate as many groups as possible with their needs. I just didn't know if there was any insight or comment that staff could provide regarding specifically the location that's been identified as one that you think would be most.
I can answer that, Amanda. Excuse me. So the location is furthest away from the school, And any of the other groups that have come forth, it wouldn't interrupt with that. So there, it is ideal too because there's no west and north neighbors to it. All open fields, so it is ideally located in that.
1 acre. Yeah. So yeah, we did look at the location based on noise, and that is detailed in the report as well. We're looking for an area that would obviously not impact residents with barking. Dogs that play are going to bark. That's healthy. That's normal, and we need to allow them to have that space. Having it located where it is reduces any of that noise concern.
Okay, any other questions? You?
The development fee charges were approved by council. And the Paula?
I can chime in here. Through you, Mayor, I think maybe what the deputy mayor, I think what you're thinking of is the fundraising grant applications that come forward. It's usually a third, a third, a third. This 25,000 that they're referring to is within the development charges study, which is approved by council.
Okay, other questions? Sure, go ahead, Mike.
Just appreciate the report. I was looking for maybe this as it was clarification. So parking spaces, we're showing the larger plan just
Yes.
in your submission for parking spaces kind of outside of the fencing areas.
Yes.
Are you envisioning cars driving all the way up to, where
Yeah.
Becky's proposing?
Yeah, so the roadway is there, as Becky is showing in the darker gray area. The lighter
Yeah.
gray area there would come up to parking just on the right side of that, with what we propose is 4 spots to allow for accommodating accessible parking and just general usage. The majority that people responded that they would walk to the park, but we do know that there is a small percentage of people that will want to drive. And depending on weather too, it may change their option of whether they walk or drive.
Yeah, just clarification, and my own vision is different, but just want to make sure. And in terms of the area itself, there's a proposed kind of walkway within the
Yes.
dog park. What do you see as the material for that?
So again, being compliant with ADA, get my acronyms right this evening.
Yeah.
I apologize. We want to make sure that it's a smooth surface, but it will be probably a crushed stone of some kind.
Similar to our trails?
Exactly. Yeah, so something that someone with a wheelchair or a power scooter would be able to navigate without much of resistance. But we will not be paving.
Okay. And then the balance of the area is grass area.
Yes.
Instead of the amenities for
Yeah.
gatherings and things,
Yeah, and then down the road, there is trees, as you see on the drawing. There is, obviously, for that park area, there was already some discussion about trees being planted, so there will be some trees. However, the rest would be grass for this phase. Depending on fundraising and how well things take off, in phase 2, we would be coming back, looking at additional shade structures, be looking at agility equipment, things that we can expand that experience for our residents and for the dogs. So, but for phase 1, just simplistic grass, fencing, pathway, a water source, and some garbage cans and some benches.
Okay, Jeremy?
The question is for Becky. Hey Becky, welcome back. How does this proposal and the timelines that they have align with the development of Greenwood? So I know we've got there's not really a plan in place at this point, but we've sort of a draft of what it would look like. They're proposing to start something in September if the money's available. How is that area ready to be developed in September, given what else is going on back there?
Yeah, there wouldn't be an issue with starting anything in that area. The funding that we applied for would all be for central area there. So it wouldn't impact one another type of thing. The only thing that we would be running, there would have to be water run, which would go through the park there, so that there would be water at some point if we were to get funding to do the washings and that, and then go through up to the dog park. That's what there's water available there. But as far as timing, because we have no funding at all for the other project, I don't see there being conflicts at this point.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Jerry?
Yeah, thanks, Alderman Great report. Something that on the township, the water, as far as what was mentioned in the report, if the township would agree with elements of plan, it would be choice to have through the township.
Yeah.
It's a similar.
Yeah, that's what we would like, Jerry. If all possible, we would like to funnel it through, for one, for visibility and accountability, and then two, as you say, for the tax receipt purpose. Anybody providing a donation and through the different means in which we are going to try to fundraise for this project, we would want to be able to offer that tax receipt as well. It would be, I think, a benefit to people to donate.
Okay, anyone else? If not, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your presentation. Do we have a motion? Motion? Okay, so we have a motion that Township of Perth East Council receives a presentation from Matthew Livingston and Justin Dietrich of the Perth East Dog Park Steering Committee on the update for the proposal for an off-leash dog park at Greenwood Park for information. We have a mover and a seconder, moved by Hugh, second by Jerry. All those in favor? Carried. Now, maybe you had a question. Okay.
Comment on what's up. So they can get this funding started. What's that's coming later?
So in preparation, staff took two approaches. One was typical as it relates to delegation, just receiving for information. The other approach was looking at the actual proposal. I think there's nine items that are identified as part of that proposal. If council's comfortable going through those and addressing those in an alternate resolution, we have that as well. Yeah, I do think there is an expectation that they want to understand whether or not they're moving forward, whether council's comfortable doing that tonight, it's up to the council, but we as a staff have tried to prepare for it. The one comment I would make, part of the proposal suggests comments around maintenance, things of those nature. We've heard tonight about the fundraising piece. At this point, there has not been a discussion with me and managers about staff requirements. Are we resourced in order to take this on, what that looks like? So that conversation needs to happen as well. But we've been waiting for the most part for council to give us the thumbs up as it relates to proceeding as a board. And I realize there's been multiple reports come forward and multiple groups coming forward, and they're all anxious, and we want them to be anxious. But I think they all recognize it's a big decision on the council. And yeah, going ahead with the dog park, this thing sends a signal to everybody else around.
Okay, anything else? Amanda?
I just have, and I should have probably brought it up sooner. My inkling is that, so it sounds like the group has been working very closely with that, which is fantastic. A lot of our service groups and community groups do that actually, but it sounds like there's also, as my alluded to, there's other conversations with like public works that might need to occur, and so I'm not sure if it makes sense for us to actually take this back with staff report with some further information for council to digest, so that we can actually, be thoughtful and provide some really clear direction to the group. It's just something that just a thought. I don't know if that's, again, I don't want to create a burden on staff to be requesting a report back, but I don't know whether it's as formal as that or whether it's just really a question about having some conversations.
My perspective, council, is that, yeah, it's always easier for me if there is clear direction and in order to follow up with that report. I think the conversations that have happened at council is funding is the trigger for a lot of things, and I respect that. But if that's the case, I think we're at a point where we need to give consideration around staff capacity issue. How are we going to maintain it? Who's going to be responsible for all the items? The group has done a very fine job acknowledging all of those things, but they are also clearly suggesting that township staff are going to take on a significant responsibility. I'm not surprised. It's just that we have not, at this point, had those conversations or been directed by council that, yes, you need to consider this. It's imminent, and yeah, we need to know where that staff capacity looks like. We just haven't done it because there has not been that direction or a clear understanding of when this is going to proceed. So it would be nice from a staff perspective, from my perspective in particular, if council gave direction that they would follow the board, whether they're addressing the capacity that's associated with their proposal.
If appropriate, Mayor, if there's comfort, I'm prepared to make a motion that we ask for a staff report on the proposal that the group has brought forward, specifically around the sort of staffing and maintenance capacity and just sort of the general layout and plan, and the compatibility with the other sort of proposals that are.
Okay, someone want to second that, Andrew? This is a new motion.
So the other motion.
We already we received that.
Supported, seconded.
Yes. Yeah. And now this is a different motion. I'm looking for a seconder. Jeremy, you want to second that? Okay. Comments, Bob?
So I appreciate that this group would like to start their fundraising, but it's a bit of piecemeal right now, and that's not how this project should happen. We need all the information in the big picture, and but there are probably more things than how much staff time it takes to cut some grass and pick up some garbage. And pretty sure there's going to be an insurance conversation here. And no impact, but last year I wrote one to be able to go down to the perk and pick it up. So I think that's another item that needs to be investigated. This 1 acre development, that's fine, but still have the other things around. We haven't really had a discussion about there. I think support in principle, so they could begin their end of it. The air, starting and finishing date. Any questions?
Okay. Jeremy?
Yeah, I think the follow-up report, Mike has you said 9 questions, 9 items that you want to be addressed or that came from the group that need to be addressed, so that just needs to be in there. And then after that, we make the decision and give them direction on whether they can proceed with their fundraising.
Okay, anyone else? Amanda?
If I may, I want to sort of speak to the intent of the motion and to really, I think we're all feeling that there's some missing bits, and it's not. This is actually one of the most detailed reports we've ever received from a community group. So I just want to commend the volunteers that have put this time in. It's very, very detailed. We typically never receive anything that detailed from a community group. So I just want to recognize that. But there are, again, the moving pieces. And I think, for me, it's, the staff thing, but the bigger thing that I alluded to, which is how does this all fit together? Because we really haven't, as Bob said, we haven't had a conversation about all the other compatibility and all the other groups that are interested in this space and what that looks like. So any insight and clarity that staff could provide council would, in a report, I think, and being brought back, would help with further conversation and understanding of what the next steps are. So that's the intention of my motion, just so that we're all clear where I'm coming from.
Okay, anyone else? Jeremy?
Becky, the draft plan for Greenwood, what was in that space? Right. So we've seen this before us several times already.
Yes.
So we've already had this draft plan that we've approved as a draft plan with it in that spot. So this isn't a new area that we're deciding to put a draft of a dog park in. We've seen this in front of us a few times. I'm just bringing that up because it seems like it's a new spot for the dog park, and it's not, at least for the last 18 months, it's been in that spot. So.
Just want to make sure we captured everything that you said. So,
I think the easiest way
The way the motion's been drafted, it actually identifies the 9 items correctly in there. To Councilor Jeremy's comment, yeah, the concept is not new and the location is not new. And the proposed soccer pitch has always been identified that area, and that area has been negotiated with school boards. They're going to maintain that section. But yeah, I know, I guess my struggle is, we've heard a couple times about the wholesome conversation. I don't know how to drill that conversation forward, because we have brought, this is at least the 3rd delegation, and there's been 3 staff reports already around this, and we keep coming back to it. Well, we need to have a wholesome conversation. I'm looking for some guidance from this council in terms of what it is that wholesome conversation. We're happy to prepare this report, but I think at the end of it, it's going to be this group and other groups looking for, are we moving forward? And I'm happy to try to do that. I just want to know what it is council needs from staff in order to do that.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I don't think there was a comment about us piecemealing this together. I don't think we're piecemealing it. We're, as funding or fundraising plans become available and come to us from different groups, we're building it a section at a time based on the plan that was created a couple of years ago, I think, in the last 18 months, whenever that plan was done. And I think that was always the intention, was to put it together as funding became available, whether we've secured funding from whatever grants that are available or whatever community group fundraises for each section. Like we have 3 different groups that are fundraising for these things at least. But I think that was always the intention, was to start plugging it together as the fundraising plans became more concrete and solid. We said the same thing to the people with the volleyball court. We said, go away, bring back a funding plan to us and a fundraising plan, how you're going to get the money. That's what we said to the dog park people. We were very explicit in saying pretty much the exact same thing to both of those groups. And this is the first one that's come back. That's part of the bigger plan. And I think that's how it's going to be developed, is yes, a section at a time. And this is the first section, to me, that it makes sense. We have those questions, we answer them. We can allow the group to move forward once those questions are answered and we're satisfied.
Okay, anyone else? Andrew?
Thank you, Mary. Good to sort of to speak to you. Great project. With the dog being these days. So I'm just, my thing for council, at least in staff, is the development charges.
would have been nice to see in the motion and the report about that attached to this, just to be clear. I know in the past and pretty well every time we don't release funds until the end of the project completion. So I don't know whether the group knows that or can float that until the project's completed to get that funding, or that's kind of, there's a lot of questions I have, I guess, is what I'm saying. You know, the project's great. I'm just, the nuts and bolts, kind of what Councillor Broadhagen is saying, are maybe not clear to everybody who's not right on the inside of it, you know, seeing it in action developing. So I think a report, maybe bring back the development charges thing there and understand that a little better and how the funding will be distributed for this particular project.
Yeah, we had no intention to start anything until adequate funding was raised. We put together what we felt was a decent amount of time to be able to go off and do those things. We realized there may be some back end work that needs to happen within council and obviously within the township staff. We just wanted time to be able to ramp up that fundraising, because that takes time. We wanted to be able to move forward. If we can't move forward, we'll wait until that meets your requirements. But we just wanted to keep the momentum going. We've had the community engagement. We have people talking about it. We've got people saying, knock on my door, I'm ready to donate. And we said, well, we appreciate that, but we have to wait a minute. We have to go back to council. We have to present this. So that's where we're at. So we've tried to answer the questions the best we can as a committee. Obviously, we understand that there's other phases going on within this project. I'm aware of that, and I also want to see the rest of this develop. But at the same time, we put in the work, and we've been able to come to the table, and we want to be able to move forward on behalf of those residents that want us to push forward, and that's why we're here now. And I realize it may seem disjointed, but unless the township is going to take control of this committee for all of these different actions and different developments, then this is the way it's going to be presented, as each group is going to have to come forward looking for your approval. So we're at your mercy, and I know it's not an easy decision, so thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to read the motion, and the motion is that council continue to support the proposed Greenwood Park development concept and fundraising plan provided by the Perth East Dog Park Steering Committee, and further that council direct staff to prepare a follow-up report regarding the business plan submitted by the Dog Park Steering Committee, including, and there's a list of design and location, budget, the maintenance plan, including use of township staff and equipment, insurance, parking plan, accessibility, education and communications, community stewardship, enforcement and monitoring, including use of township staff, complaint process, including use of township staff, fundraising plan, and the timing of the project. Okay. So we have that moved by Amanda. We have it seconded by Jeremy. Are there any more comments or questions? All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Thanks, gentlemen. Okay, we do not have any other presentations. We have no delegations. We do have a public meeting. So I declare this public meeting to be open. This public meeting is being held to consider the proposed zoning bylaw amendment generally affecting all areas within the Township of Perth East. This meeting is an opportunity for the Township to advise the public of the purpose and intent of the amendment and receive their input prior to considering adoption of an implementing bylaw. If a bylaw is adopted to implement the zoning amendment, a notice of passing will be forwarded by prepaid first-class mail to various agencies of interest and others who have requested notice. An appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal objecting to the adoption of the bylaw may be e-filed via the OLT e-file service no later than the date stated on the notice. Any person attending this meeting who wishes to receive written notice of the bylaw passed to implement the amendment is asked to give their name and mailing address to the clerk following this meeting. No written notice except as previously noted will be given unless requested in writing following the meeting. All persons attending this meeting will be given an opportunity to be heard or make a presentation. I will now call on our planner, Moira Davidson, to present the planning report and recommendations. So welcome, Moira. Good to see you. And the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, members of Portuguese Council. Good evening, members of the public. I'm here to present, as Mayor Eggett said, the housekeeping amendment proposed for the Perth East zoning bylaw. A housekeeping amendment is quite common in planning practice. It allows for the zoning bylaw to ensure that it is kept up to date with, applications that you receive, zoning bylaw amendments. It also allows us to ensure that the zoning bylaw is in compliance and is consistent with provincial policy. So this evening, if you'll go to the next slide, you'll see that I'm going to kind of summarize what the housekeeping is, what its purpose is, and then also give you a summary of what the proposed amendments are. I've themed them out for you. If you look into the report that's provided, there's also a table that shows the itemized amendments that are being proposed. So I'm happy to go into the details of those itemized items at the end of this meeting, but I'm hoping to give you kind of a summary moving forward so that it's kind of easier to understand what we're looking for, and we don't have to be here for a couple hours while I read you each individual one. Next slide. So as I said, housekeeping amendments, they're an important part of good planning practice. They allow us to improve the usability and consistency and effectiveness of the zoning bylaw. It ensures that the text that we have within the zoning bylaw is accurate with other bylaws of yourselves that Perth East has, as well as other provincial policies that we have seen changes to recently. So housekeeping amendments have already been undertaken regularly in Perth East, the most recent one being done in 2019. Since that point, we've seen about 10 bills be passed by the province, which have resulted in the need for further updates to the zoning bylaw to ensure consistency. There's also been conversations with staff to identify areas of the zoning bylaw that maybe could use some further clarity, items that maybe the members of the public frequently ask questions for or they're not so clear on, and the housekeeping allows us to do some clerical errors to ensure, or address clerical errors, to ensure that the text within the zoning bylaw is accurate and effective and allows for a simple implementation across the township. It's the opinion of planning staff that the amendments that are before you today are minor in nature, and they don't impact the implementation of the zoning bylaw. Next slide. So now I'll delve into the kind of themes of the amendments that you see before you. The first theme is text duplications and reference errors. So it's quite common as the zoning bylaw gets updated throughout the years and different site-specific amendments are made, that there might be section references that no longer are correct. The housekeeping amendment proposed before you looks to address those clerical errors and ensure that appropriate references are being made, not only just to the zoning bylaw itself, but also to the naming protocols of different acts that are released by the province, kind of the changes that we're seeing across the board over the years to those specific acts, and just making sure that we're reducing the need for housekeeping by either simplifying those amendments. So rather than specifically calling out the name of that act, we would maybe simplify that terminology so that further down the line, if the province chooses to change that naming again, we don't need to go through this process so frequently. Next slide. The next theme of amendments before you relate to the removal of provisions themselves. So as I briefly stated, there were many bills passed at the provincial level that have changed kind of provincial policy as a whole. And in doing so, it has impacted some of the policies and provisions that are in local policy, mostly being in the zoning bylaw. We have 510, which is regarding mobile homes. Previously, they were prohibited. It's now recognized that mobile homes serve a need in the community as a housing option, and prohibiting them would be against the provincial planning statement. So we recommended, a removal of that policy. There's also a current policy, in the Perth East zoning bylaw that speaks to one dwelling unit per lot. This now is in contravention of the Planning Act, which speaks to allowing additional residential units on a property, up to 2. So therefore, we recommended the removal of that policy there. There's also some policies in the Perth East zoning bylaw that are better suited, in the opinion of staff, for a bylaw under the Municipal Act, we'll say. So currently, there's certain policies you'll see in 5.22 on the regulation of animals. Now, under the Planning Act, zoning bylaws are only able to regulate the use of land, not the use of animals, and that's better suited for, an animal control bylaw or something similar. Those regulations are permitted under the Municipal Act. So we've attempted to remove policies that, remove provisions, that are not able to be regulated through the zoning bylaw. And the intention of that is, say something comes up and we're needing to justify this policy or this provision, at the OLT, if we go worst case scenario. If we're putting provisions in our planning policies and the zoning bylaw that aren't able to be justified through rationale under the Planning Act, then we wouldn't be able to support Perth East appropriately. So at this time, we're recommending that animal provision be removed and potentially considered through a animal control bylaw or similar bylaw there. Next slide. The third theme I have before you is changes to definitions. This is again related to changes we've seen at different provincial policy statements or Ontario Building Code, ensuring alignment there. We've added new definitions, and then we've also amended various definitions that currently exist in the zoning bylaw. Essentially, we're just looking to ensure that current and modern terminology is utilized, as well as ensuring consistency and conformity to overarching planning policy. Next slide. The next theme that surrounds the amendments we have before you is reflecting council decisions. So staff were able to work together to review the applications that Perth East has seen before yourselves over the past 10 years, have it be through minor variances or zoning bylaw amendments in and of themselves. And we found consistencies and similarities in the relief that's been granted by this council in terms of accessory building heights or lot coverage, yard widths, or yard depths. And for this reason, we recognize that maybe because these reliefs are being granted so frequently and so reoccurring, it's created or established a new development standard in that regard. And we're looking to align now the zoning bylaw with those trends so that we're hoping to reduce the amount of applications needed by future members of the public and future applicants because they're asking for such similar requests so frequently that we anticipate that council will approve just based on the trends we've seen in past applications. Next slide. Just one key map was recommended to be changed through this housekeeping amendment, and it's a clerical error that was found on I have the key map here. The key map for property boundary 4187 on Road 106. It was previously approved to be amended through the application B1 2013 and Z8 2013. And looking at the mapping in and of itself, the GIS data that we had didn't appropriately line up to the schedule that was approved by this council. So we're just looking to make that clerical error with this housekeeping. Next slide. The key theme that surrounds the housekeeping amendment before you is related to additional residential units. This was I would say, most recent and widespread change that occurred at the provincial level in permitting additional residential units across the board. And in doing so, they changed the terminology from what we're considering an additional residential unit, previously referred to as secondary dwelling unit, we're looking to change that terminology in the zoning bylaw to ensure consistency with what it's currently called. There's also requirements or as of right permissions that the Planning Act grants to how many units you can have on a property, and we look to align the policies from those overarching provincial policies with that of the zoning bylaw. Next slide. There is one last minute revision to the housekeeping amendment from what you see in your report and in the bylaw provided. There was an error identified in the report. You see it on the final table. It was identified that there are some errors in the key maps and how the adjacent land zone is depicted. In conversations with our GIS team, who is the data holders of all the zoning bylaw schedules, we recognize that the change would be more extensive than what is appropriate for housekeeping, just because housekeeping isn't intended to change the intention or implementation of the zoning bylaw, it's just intended to address clerical issues. So we've actually proposed that that matter be addressed through the comprehensive zoning bylaw review. Next slide. And that is my quick summary of what we're proposing as part of the housekeeping, but I'm happy to go through any of the detailed amendments that are in your report before you.
Okay, I have to go through the script here. Thanks, Maura. Is there anyone present who wishes to make a presentation or speak in opposition of the application? Seeing no one, is there anyone present who wishes to make a presentation or speak in support of the application other than the applicant or the applicant's agent? Seeing no one, does the applicant or the applicant's agent wish to make a presentation or speak with respect to the application? You already did that. Okay, now we're at, are there questions from members of council? Amanda?
Just two questions. One is a more general one and one is more specific. So the general one is just regarding, like it's great to see that we're doing some housekeeping work. Is this sort of the first, I think we've had one other presentation, if I recall, on the city on a housekeeping matter. Are we going to be seeing more of these sort of presentations come forward to council? Like what sort of, is this sort of a part of the bigger plan that the county is working towards and engaging the lower tiers on? So that's my general question, and my specific question is just more related, because I just want to make sure I fully understand it's specifically related to the 6.3.3.1, and it's talking about buildings and structures for livestock and manure storage and buildings. And so if I'm understanding correctly, we're just removing language because certain language because it's already referenced through MDS. Like I just want to make sure that we're not doing unintended, because we're such an agriculture-based municipality. I just want to make sure that we're not doing something that is perhaps deemed problematic in the eyes of the farmers. So I just wanted to get some clarity around that.
I'll answer the latter question first, just so I have it top of mind. So to your question about removing that MDS formula, it is not changing the intention. They would still be required to be in compliant with MDS. It is just the MDS formula is a standard that is separate from the zoning bylaw, and we want to ensure that we're letting the MDS guidelines provide guidance separate from the zoning bylaw. And the way that it was currently written is not in keeping with how we are trying to have zoning bylaws written. There's currently, I guess I'll read it out so that everyone's aware of what we're reading. It says the minimum yard shall be established by the minimum distance separation formula, but shall not be less than, and then it gives some yards separation. The way that it's currently written provides some gray area, and we're intending for the zoning bylaw to be black or white. So it's saying that the minimum yard shall not be less than, and it's giving these statements here, subject to other requirements would still need that building to meet MDS separation. It's not something that should be subject to the zoning bylaw per se. So we're trying to move away from having multiple policies. Yes.
Of an existing, like it's in press somewhere else, and it's not, yeah, okay, I understand.
Yes. Thank you. You put it way more eloquently than I did. But yes, we're trying to avoid duplication. Yes. And for your first question, regarding kind of, are you expected to see this more frequently? Is this something that's part of a larger picture? So I actually have another presentation for yourselves later this evening on the terms of reference for the comprehensive zoning bylaw. So the intention of the housekeeping, it is anticipated that there will be more regular housekeeping amendments done. It's not uncommon for them to happen yearly or every other year. It just sometimes they haven't been done as frequently as maybe they should have, but you should anticipate seeing me more frequently for these. Now, this housekeeping specifically, it intends to bring you to a point where you can continue to process applications and continue to implement the zoning bylaw in a, don't want to say good enough, but it is an interim solution while we undertake the comprehensive review, which I will speak about again later on. But the comprehensive review will be a fulsome review of the whole zoning bylaw. The housekeeping right now, it just looks at what are the most important things that need to be covered immediately that can't wait for, 3 years while we do the comprehensive review. So that's kind of what we've trying to balance out there.
Yeah, that's helpful. Like, this is my second term on council, and I feel like there's like a shift in a good way, because I don't recall ever, and maybe my memory's bad, but like I just don't recall ever us having the housekeeping as frequent. Like, we would have maybe a one-off, but it's good to see that this is sort of happening. So great work. I appreciate that.
Okay, other questions, Andrew?
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for coming to visit us and give us some good information. So I noticed mentioned land use or Schedule A. Is that the mapping is changed in this housekeeping thing?
The one key map will be changing, not the entirety of Schedule A.
So for example, for Perth settlement areas, has any of those changed boundaries or?
No. So it's only the Schedule A that pertains to the property located at 4187 Road 106.
Okay.
Yes.
So you've outlined any changes that are perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Hugh?
The 6 meters in height is in keeping with what we've seen across other municipalities. It is ensuring that the 6 meter building, whatever we have in the zoning bylaws, permitted as of right. So we've determined, and based on our review of other municipalities, that anything above 6 meters maybe warrants review from staff. And enable to trigger that and allow us to ensure that there's no conflict in a building that's over 6 meters or a structure over 6 meters. They would do a minor variance or a zoning bylaw amendment. So we've determined that 6 meter mark is kind of what's on par with what we're seeing elsewhere permitted as of right, and then hoping that anything above that gives staff the ability to see if there are any impacts through an application.
In Milverton or on my farm, you have a primary residence. So how many other residences can you have on that farm?
You can have 2 other additional residential units on a property. There can either be 2 additional residential units attached or within the primary dwelling or primary residential unit, or there can be 1 residential unit in a separate accessory structure and 1 additional residential unit in the principal primary residential dwelling.
Okay, but in the secondary units, you can't then you break them down.
Correct. There's only to a maximum of 3 units per lot.
Okay, now there's been so much stuff on that, about the numbers or what you could do and stuff like that, and reading through it, it was a little bit confusing, so I just wanted to make absolutely sure that it's 3, that's the absolute max.
It's 3 permitted as of right. So there would be the permission for them to come before council with a amendment or a minor variance to increase that amount, that unit. But as of right is what's permitted in the Planning Act, and that's what we've continued forward in the zoning bylaw.
And they would have to, if we were in, say, an urban area, they would have to meet, like parking, and they have to meet a bunch of other things before they could just put in another unit, would they not?
They would have to meet the requirements. Well, they'd need a building permit first off, but they would need to meet the minimum requirements of the Planning Act. So parking requires that there's 1 parking space per additional residential unit, and then there are other provisions in urban areas that the Planning Act dictates, and then there's other provisions that they allow the zoning bylaw to dictate. So we've aligned the permissions in the urban areas with the Planning Act where it's needed. So that's the lot coverage, 45% lot coverage. And I need my list so that I can ensure that I have them all. Lot coverage and, distance separation between residential structures. So we've aligned those where there isn't provisions. We've then kept them the same as what they currently are, or we've recommended they be reduced based on the applications that have already been approved by this council through previous minor variances and zoning bylaw amendments.
So it would be something that would have to be covered too?
The movement of water is something that would be covered under the building code and the building permit. We are focusing more so on the use of land, not the building of a use on such land.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking that, in some places where the houses are, if you did put something else in, there's a whole lot of other things you have to think about, and that's one of the major ones that always causes problem is water. So, no, thank you for that.
And on a rebuttal or response to that or clarification, we are looking to have additional residential units be a key theme or a key item of discussion and research through the comprehensive review. What we've put into this housekeeping is just what's absolutely required by the Planning Act currently, and wanting to ensure that someone doesn't come before you with an application that's already permitted by the Planning Act, but the zoning bylaw doesn't align. So we've reached a happy medium here in what we're recommending, but there's definitely still room for improvement and innovation in how we can address these mandated, I guess I'll say, additional residential units under the Planning Act in the unique community where there is such a balance in rural and urban.
Okay, Jeremy?
Section 14 is the Milverton R3. Just changing it to residential zone 3. Other permitted uses, so the exterior side yard goes to 4.2 meters. All other uses, permitted uses, 7.5 meters. So R3, is that like an apartment structure, or what are the other permitted uses beyond row and townhouse dwellings?
They would be higher density structures. And the only reason why we haven't proposed a change to that is because we haven't done the research. There wasn't enough data through the minor variances and zoning bylaws to consider a change in that structure. But there were enough to consider a change in row and townhouse dwellings. Again, there's also the consideration that all other permitted uses would be an apartment, would typically be more stories. There might be more shadow impacts, so we want to ensure that we're not changing those setbacks for those just yet, and would look at those during the comprehensive review.
Okay. I could be wrong. I'm thinking 15, 18 years ago, I feel like our lot coverage percentage was 25%. Am I completely off base with this? Yeah, like there's a little bit of concern. I'm pretty sure in my first term of council it was 25%. Now we're hitting 45%. We do regularly approve them at 42 and 43%. We keep moving the goalpost. What is a minor variance application? The next application that comes in is 50% lot coverage. You know, I know we're looking for more dense development and all that stuff too. And no, Andrew talks about this all the time when we have these types of applications. This is getting concerning, continuing to move those goalposts. Soon it's at 75%. I'm not sure where it ends, I guess, as we continue to move those goalposts, but just something to think about. I'm fairly certain it was 25% in my first term of council before we had the level of development we have now, and it's encroaching on doubling that at this point.
Okay, other questions? Seeing none, I know Mike has one comment.
I just had a couple of things, I think, just for clarification for myself and probably for others. I'm hoping that there's a new definition as it relates to farm where included. And historically, our zoning bylaw included definitions for farm use and agricultural use. Is this farm definition intended to replace those definitions, or is it working in concert with those?
It's intended to work in concert with them. Now, it's up to yourselves whether that definition should stay in. It was something that was brought up not just in Perth East, it was also brought up in Perth South when we were there, and is something that could be looked at through the comp review, if not wanting to be part of the housekeeping. It's not looking to replace those. It's related to surplus farm dwelling severances. It's related to where there is terminology in the zoning bylaw that speaks to farm, separate from farm use and separate from agricultural use. Instead of looking at aligning the zoning bylaw various sections with, you know, is it agricultural use, is it farm use, is it farm? We've just added a new definition to ensure that in the interim, we can ensure consistency and clarity throughout the various provisions that are in the zoning bylaw. In the comprehensive review, is there just one definition? Maybe. But for now, I think that we're just proposing it be added in, not replacing anything.
Okay, because, yeah, I think to Councilor Broadhaven's earlier comments, you know, we want to keep as inclusive as possible as it relates to ag and farm uses, so I appreciate that. The other thing I just wanted to bring up was around the removal of restrictions on animals within the zoning bylaw. I don't disagree with the what's being proposed. I think from council's awareness point, we've heard frequently about backyard chickens. The removal of what's being proposed would now allow backyard chickens within across all of our urban areas with zero restrictions as things are currently proposed. So my intent, I know we've had a report that came to council previously with some general information about how others have put in provisions to address backyard chickens. We don't need to do that, but it's something that we council must consider, because at this point, it opens the door completely wide open to that, and maybe we're fine with that. We just want to see how that goes, but it also opens the door to other too. So that's just a little caution around that, and I think that was another thing. Well, just again, one more. This is the highlight piece. Many will remember Jeremy talking about 25%. One of the proposals here would also eliminate the non-permanent dwelling and garden suite. So that was the old where you had to enter into an agreement to allow for second dwelling on farm property. Lots of times they were referred to as granny suites. With the changes in the Planning Act, those are no longer required. There's now as of rights. So we have some old historic agreements and some deposits associated with those agreements that we're going to have to clean up.
Okay, anyone else? Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I completely missed then on the chicken item. Roosters then, like we've had a couple of rooster problems in the past, and we need to get on this situation with the backyard chickens then, because we can't have a rooster in an urban setting. And this has happened already in the municipality a few times. So if this is opening up that door, it needs to be addressed like immediately. I don't know where we stand with that, Wes, but this is going to be a problem.
Yeah, we got that complaint about so yeah, I think it is in our best interest to think about how to handle that. A lot of other municipalities just have a limit on how many chickens and no roosters. City of Kitchener has like a registration, kind of like a dog kennel. Council's previously said they don't want a fee for the backyard chickens. I would probably recommend that we do incur a fee similar to a dog kennel to regulate that if it's becoming a problem. I wouldn't say there's a terrible amount of complaints about roosters, but yeah, there's certainly half a dozen or a dozen per year, I'd say, based on my time here. If that answers your question. Or raises more questions?
Yeah, I would appreciate dealing with this matter very soon if there's going to be the possibility of having roosters in an urban setting. We did talk about this before and we decided not to do anything with it, but I feel like we had some way to handle the rooster issue, and if this is eliminating any teeth that we have to deal with it, that to me is going to be a big problem.
So just for clarification from Moira, we don't put it in this zoning bylaw, or we have another?
If the intention is to keep the, if you could go back to the slide that speaks on removal of provisions, I think it's, excellent, thank you. We could have the recommendation remove 522E, which is the regulation of animals. If the concern is that there is no teeth, I guess I would caution that while it's in the zoning bylaw as it currently stands, under the Planning Act, there currently isn't any teeth to that policy. If someone was to question it or attempt to question that in regards to, is this proper planning, it would not pass the test at the OLT, which is kind of what we're considering. Like there are by no means ways to regulate chickens, ways to regulate animals. I think the solution in the past was to use a zoning bylaw. Our just identification through this process is that it may not be the best tool, given that regulation of animals would fall under the Municipal Act and the zoning bylaw falls under the Planning Act.
Okay, Andrew?
Thank you, Mary. So I don't want to, by not accepting this way it's written, I don't want to undo something that hopefully we're working on. That's what I don't understand. Are we not working on a zoning bylaw, Perth East zoning bylaw for chickens? I thought we were.
So yeah, I want to be clear. It's not a zoning bylaw. It would be another form of animal control bylaw that would be coming out of the municipal act. We presented recommendations to council about 8 months ago, and at that point there was no appetite to have any type of restriction. But also at that time, zoning didn't allow it. So now the zoning will allow it. So I think it's an opportune time for council as a group, not one councillor or two councillors as a whole, to give direction to staff to bring that report back to consideration around a new bylaw regulating animals other than dogs, which we are.
Okay, All right, other questions? Andrew?
So procedurally, are we dispensed with the county thing yet or no? Have we voted on the county thing yet? There's been so much discussion. So can we attach direction to staff to come back with a,
Well, right now we're in a public meeting.
okay, so after that, can we?
So when the
Or
public meeting is closed, we, after the motion, and then if someone wants to bring a motion up then you can do that. Right? Okay, okay. Any other questions then on what Moira's presented, what we've seen? If not, then we'll move on. Council will consider a resolution regarding a planning report recommendation following the conclusion of the public meeting. Bylaw 201-2025 to implement the approval of the zoning application will be considered later within the council agenda. The public meeting is now concluded and we will continue with the regular meeting of council. And we do have a motion, and it reads, whereas the Council of the Township of Perth East held a statutory public meeting pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act with respect to zoning bylaw amendment Z01-2025, and that council hereby received the zoning bylaw housekeeping amendment staff report dated March 4, 2025, entitled Zoning Bylaw Amendment Z01-2025, submitted on behalf of the Township of Perth East, affecting all areas within the Township of Perth East for information, and that council approves zoning bylaw amendment 201-2025 submitted on behalf of the Township of Perth East, affecting all areas within the Township of Perth East. Moved by Amanda, second by Hugh. All in favor? Carried. Now, if you wish to make a motion in regards to the chickens.
thank you, Mary. I just wonder if it might be more appropriate in other business. I know it's not on the agenda, but this item that's now opened that up, it was on the agenda, so.
Let's ask the clerk. Okay, we'll do it under other business. Okay, now we have public hearing. Council will now temporarily adjourn to sit committee of adjustment pursuant to Section 45 of the Planning Act. I now declare this public hearing open. This public hearing is being held to consider an application affecting property currently owned by Houseoff Family Farms, Inc. and described as Concession 5, Part Lot 18, Concession 6, Lot 18, Ellis Ward, 4702, Line 42. The purpose of this hearing is to give the committee and the public an opportunity to hear all interested persons with respect to the proposed application and receive their input, and for the committee to make a decision on the application. All persons attending this hearing will be given an opportunity to be heard or make a presentation. Committee members may ask questions for the purposes of clarifying the application, but are asked to withhold comments on this application until all present have given an opportunity to be heard. Any person who wishes to receive written notice of the decision made by the Committee of Adjustment is asked to email their name and mailing address to the Secretary Treasurer at this time. An appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal objecting to the decision made at this hearing may be e-filed via the OLT e-file service by the applicant, the municipality, the minister, or prescribed utility providers with its Secretary Treasurer no later than March 24, 2025. No written notice, except as previously noted, will be given unless requested at this time. I will now call on our planner, Jeff Bannon, to present the planning report and recommendations. You're welcome, Jeff. The floor is yours.
So the minor variance application is MV1 2025, was submitted by Holshaw Family Farms Incorporated for the property at 4709 line 42. Subject lands are approximately 53 hectares in area and are in agricultural production. Purpose of the application is to facilitate the construction of an addition to the existing barn. The proposal involves a demolition of a portion of that barn and the construction of a larger barn addition that will be about 1,600 square meters in size. The requested relief is required to reduce the minimum distance separation from the neighboring residential dwelling located to the north of the subject property to the proposed barn, and also that includes manure storage. Subject lands are designated as agricultural in the official plan. Minimum distance separation provisions applies to all new development in order to minimize nuisance complaints associated with livestock and anaerobic digesters due to odor, which reduces potential land conflicts. Variances to those MDS2 distances need to be minor in nature with no unacceptable adverse impacts, or the proposal needs to mitigate environmental impacts that are associated with the farming operation. The proposed minor variance will provide for the construction of a livestock barn with in-ground manure storage. The existing barn is immediately adjacent to a regulated area that is required to be in close proximity to the existing barn to reduce the environmental impacts associated with the construction of the second livestock barn with the manure storage. That would need to be located outside of the regulated area and would be separated from the existing barn by the existing ditch. As a result, the minor variance, we consider it to be meeting the general intent and the purpose of the official plan. Property is zoned as Special Agricultural Zone A-139 in the bylaw. The specific zoning allows for expanded livestock facilities with 1,900 feeder hogs, a setback of 342 meters to the residence at 4657 line 42, setback of 284 meters from the residence at 4700 line 42, and 550 meters from the Wartburg settlement area. That zoning provision was established in 2012 to allow the construction of that existing barn. With our MAFRA MDS guidelines, there's guideline 43 that states that those setback requirements shouldn't be reduced except in site-specific limited circumstances that meet the intent of the MDS document. The MDS setback will allow for the expansion of the existing livestock barn that will include ground manure storage, which is connected to the existing barn. Proposed location avoids the construction of a barn within a regulated area, and it also contributes to preserving farmland on the south side of the regulated land. Existing barn and new construction will continue to store manure underground, and this location reduces the impacts of the farming operation on the environment, and impacts on the surrounding residential uses and properties will be similar to the existing impacts from the current agricultural farm. Variance can be considered to be minor in nature. It's an appropriate use of the land, and as a result, planning is recommending approval of the application. I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Is there anyone present who wishes to make a presentation or speak in opposition? Seeing no one, is there anyone present who wishes to make a presentation or speak in support of the application other than the applicant or the applicant's agent? Seeing no one, does the applicant or the applicant's agent wish to address or wish to make a presentation or speak with respect to the application? Vince or Craig, do you have anything to say?
It's been quite a while since we built something. It's quite a long process. I was thank them for that. It's been very helpful, accommodating, and helping us try to get this through. So, if there's any other questions, I didn't really know why we're doing this, but
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from committee members? No. The committee will now consider a motion regarding the application. The motion is that the Township of Perth East Committee of Adjustment hereby receive the application for minor variance D13-A01-2025-PE submitted by Houseoff Family Farms Inc. for lands described as Concession 5, Part Lot 18, Concession 6, Lot 18, Ellis Ward, 4702, Line 42 for information, and that the committee hereby approve application file D13-A01-2025-PE submitted by Houseoff Family Farms Inc. for lands described as Concession 5, Part Lot 18, Concession 6, Lot 18, Ellis Ward, Township of Perth East, municipally known as 4709, Line 42, as relates to number 1, relief from Section 6.4 to reduce the northern minimum distance separation requirement to the residential dwelling located at 4700 line 42 for a livestock barn and manure storage from 255.2 meters to 224 meters, subject to the following conditions. And the one condition is that the owners obtain the necessary building permit within 2 years of the approval of the minor variance. Moved by Amanda, second by Jerry. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. I declare this public hearing closed. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Oh, nope, Jeff stand, because we're Moving on now to the planning report, we have part lot control application. So Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So the part lot control application 01-2025 was submitted by Mark Magrin for the lands known as 2177 Andrew Street in Shakespeare. Subject application is requested approval to pass a bylaw that exempts the subject lands from the part lot control provisions of the Planning Act. If exempted, each unit of the semi-detached dwelling will be able to be separately conveyable. They have submitted a 2-lot development plan showing the proposed development, which is a semi-detached dwelling, on the parcels to be created from the exemption of the part lot control, and it's still under construction. Subject lands are designated a serviced urban area, residential, in the County of Perth official plan, and they are zoned as residential medium density R2 zone. That zone allows for a semi-detached dwelling that is currently being constructed. With the recent approval of a minor variance application A05-2024, that application reduced the minimum side yard setbacks, interior side yards, to 1.52 meters, and both lots continue to comply with all other provisions of the R2 zone. Planning Act allows for council to provide that further separation of land through the part lot control application can be described in the zoning bylaw. The County of Perth is the delegated approval authority under the Planning Act for bylaws to remove part lot control for the lands and member municipalities in the county. The removal of the part lot control to establish lot lines between units of a semi-detached dwelling is accepted method of lot creation under the Planning Act, and once the exempting bylaw is approved, the surveyor's reference plan showing the lot lines is completed and registered in the Land Registry Office. Bylaw is in effect for a period of 2 years, after which time the provisions of the Planning Act would be reinstated. Staff are supportive of the proposed bylaw, part lot control exemption in the bylaw, and recommend that Perth East Council approve the application and forward that bylaw to Perth County for approval, and then that the approved bylaw be provided to the Township of Perth East to be registered on title. I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Questions of the report? No questions, then we have a motion that the Township of Perth East Council hereby receive application D24-PLC-01-2025-PE submitted by Mark Merrigan for the exemption of part lot control on lands described as Part Ramsey Street, Plan 33144R5058, Part 3, 2177 Andrew Street, dated March 4, 2025 for information, and that council approve the application submitted by Mark Merrigan for the exemption of part lot control on lands described as Part Ramsey Street, Plan 33144R5058, Part 3, 2177 Andrew Street in the Township of Perth East, and forward bylaw 13-2025 to the County of Perth for approval, and that the approval bylaw be provided to the Township of Perth East to be registered on title. Moved by Amanda, second by Hugh. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Now we're going to move on to a comprehensive zoning bylaw review, terms of reference, and Moira is back to do that.
So kind of in follow-up to the zoning bylaw or housekeeping, that discussion we had previously, before you is a report, and I'm hoping that the presentation does a good summary of it. Essentially, I am looking for council to give direction to begin the undertaking of a comprehensive zoning bylaw review for the township's zoning bylaw. You'll see in the report there, provide some rationale and kind of the project background. So as required under the Planning Act, there is a stipulation that zoning bylaws be updated 3 years following the update to a official plan. Now, the county official plan was approved by County Council in October of 2024. It's now before the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for final approval. The Ministry has advised us that it's a good for us to get started on the zoning bylaw, even though that they have not provided final approval of that official plan. So we are essentially getting a head start on this process before that approval is received. Now we anticipate receiving that approval in December, and that is when, at least by December. It could be sooner. We were kind of in a holding point with the election, but now that that's over, we're expecting it may ramp up, or it could be as soon as, we get approval in the summer. And that's when the 3-year mark hits for us to ensure that the zoning bylaw is updated in alignment with provincial policy, in alignment with the new county OP. So I'm now before you to kind of request that you support staff, both township staff and county staff, to begin this process for you. I think we go to the next slide. So I'm just kind of go over the project rationale, what I'm proposing the project team to be, the scope of work, and the project schedule. I'm looking for this to be a information gathering piece for yourselves, kind of understanding what this process would look like, but also obtain feedback from yourselves if there's any key pieces that you think are missing or should be considered as part of this project, whether it's additional scopes of work that you're looking for, additional stakeholders, or engagement sessions. I'm looking for feedback from yourselves on that as well, in addition to kind of beginning this process. Next slide. So this kind of touches on kind of what I was explaining before, that the Planning Act guides provincial policy and who can control land and how. And we have the provincial planning statement that was recently updated in August of 2024. Then we have the official plan, county official plan, that was updated in October 2024. Now we're looking to update the zoning bylaw, which is that site-by-site control basis that allows us to determine how the policies of the official plan and other provincial policies are applied at a local level. Next slide. So as you see there's the section that I'm referencing where a zoning bylaw must conform to and be in compliance with an official plan following 3 years after an official plan update. We're anticipating that this comprehensive review will be will allow us to collaborate with the other local municipalities and other local staff. And we'll also ensure that it's in alignment with the Planning Act, it's consistent with provincial policy, but it also ensures that it's reflective of best practices and consistent across the county. We're seeing some comments from members of the public and applicants that there's differing standards when you cross a border or you on the other side of a road, and they're wanting to ensure that for consistency's sake, and if someone has property in Perth East and someone also has property just over a road or a border in North Perth, they're having the same standards applied to them. So that's kind of what we're hoping that this comprehensive review can also do for us. Next slide. So here's a quick summary of kind of what I anticipate the project team and the organization structure to look like and how we're actually going to undertake this comprehensive zoning bylaw review. I'm anticipating it to be a collaborative approach between the county and all 4 local municipalities. It'll be led by myself as the senior policy planner with the county, and it'll be led out of the county as we have the GIS support that can assist us there. But I'm also anticipating that it is in collaboration with what I've called the steering committee. So I'm essentially anticipating that we'll lead the review, all the background, the work, but we'll be having regular check-ins with the steering committee made up of local CBOs, local CAOs, local planners, public works representatives, economic development representatives, as well as the county's resilience and stewardship coordinator. We'd meet with them regularly to ensure that the needs of each local municipality are being met with each deliverable we create, and then we would move forward kind of with a best practice approach for whatever it might be that's identified that needs to be changed. Next slide. So here I have a quick summary of, or overview of kind of what I anticipate the project scope to look like. I've broken it down into 5 phases. There's more details in the report itself on the exact tasks that I anticipate to have occur and the deliverables I anticipate to be part of each phase. But essentially we're looking at a background and research phase, then we'll be doing some more research and analysis, and then we'd be looking to have a draft zoning bylaw and a final zoning bylaw and implementation and appeals. So essentially I'm also recognizing that there are 4 zoning bylaws that need to be updated at one time in order to ensure that all 4 are compliant with the official plan at the same time. I'm proposing that the first 2 phases be a really collaborative approach, that they be, one background report for all 4 municipalities. Each member of the steering committee, which has representatives from each lower tier, are on it, and they're approving of those documents. And then when we get to a point where the research is quite standard across the board, it's not anticipated to be unique between municipalities. It'll require some uniqueness and some tailored in, Perth East approach. But overall, it would be, comparator assessments with municipalities outside of Perth County, planning trends and best practices across the province. And then when we get into phase 3, we would be splitting up the approach. So I would be having separate meetings with Perth East staff and separate meetings with Perth South staff, let's say. And then that's when we would create a tailored approach for the comprehensive review. So we would start out as a collaboration, and we would break out into individual zoning bylaws as we get further down the project line, and there's more need for local considerations to be granted into the actual specific writing of those bylaws. Go to the next slide. We'll see a summary of the deliverables that I'm proposing. So terms of reference is actually what you have before you now. It's kind of our best anticipation of what we expect to be included in the scope and what have you, and then we're hoping that all 4 councils give us approval to begin this process. We would then be looking to create an engagement strategy, and I have a slide kind of summarizing that as well. And then there'd be a policy review paper. The policy review paper would look to essentially consolidate all policies that need to be referenced. So now this, is going to be a work in progress, and we need to speak with staff if there's considerations that need to be granted. That's what the steering committee will allow us to do. But I'm anticipating it will look to all the provincial policies that the zoning bylaw needs to consider. It'll also look at all the local bylaws that maybe the zoning bylaw should take into consideration. This may not, be a great example, but I know that there was that park piece. Maybe there's something that needs to be considered regarding parks in the zoning bylaw. So that policy review paper would allow us to take kind of a look at what exists to date and what can be brought into the zoning bylaw. And then that will allow us kind of a starting point there. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see phase 2, and this is our research and analysis stage. So we anticipate there to be background papers as part of this stage that focus on key themes. And this is where a lot of comparator assessments will be done. We'll be looking at what are other municipalities doing. We have already kind of an idea of areas across the province who have recently done comprehensive reviews. So they have really updated policies, updated zoning bylaws. They have, maybe already undergone some reviews with stakeholders such as, agricultural communities or, business communities, and they have a really good sense of what works and what doesn't work. So we would be looking there for what's best practices, what could we consider in Perth East to bring the zoning bylaw up to date with best practices. So right now I have proposed that there'll be some type of residential land use background paper. There'll be a non-residential land use background paper, that one being kind of urban focused. So we'd be doing like commercial, industrial, mixed use, kind of downtown areas. And then there'd be some type of open space and parks background paper and covering all those themes, and then agricultural, and then parking and loading. So that's kind of what my thoughts are currently, but happy to have a discussion of if there's anything missing there. And again, if you go through the detailed scope of work we do have, is that these background papers will be the themes of which will be approved by the steering committee before we actually undertake any research and development. Next slide. So phase 3 is where I'm proposing that we break out from the kind of conjoined collaborative steering committee, and we would break out into the actual 4 zoning bylaws. I do anticipate that there would kind of be one template created for each of the zoning bylaws, which would allow for similarities in formatting, essentially. So one of the big things we would be looking at is creating a tabularized zoning bylaw. So right now, if you look in the Perth East zoning bylaw, a lot of the provisions are just that. It's just text heavy. We'd be looking to add illustrations to clarify how zoning bylaw should be applied on a site-by-site basis, as well as a simple table to allow for easy use by the public. You don't have to be a planning professional to understand what it's saying. So at that point, we'd be creating draft zoning bylaws. And at the next slide or next phase, we'd have the final ones. So this is where we'd be, there'd be engagement throughout, and I'll touch on that in a bit, but once we've engaged the public and there's been, time for agency comments and time for stakeholders to comment, we'd propose those final zoning bylaws. And then at that point, we would meet the statutory requirements of the Planning Act, a public meeting, notice periods, what have you. Once that's passed, we then go into phase 5, which is the implementation and appeals. So as you'll see, the deliverables are the same. The difference being if there are any appeals of the zoning bylaw once approved, planning staff would then work to compile the applications or compile the appeal packages that are required. And then once all those appeals are finalized, we would assist in implementing the final zoning bylaws as they're approved by the OLT. Next slide. So after seeing kind of all those deliverables and what's being proposed, I have a project schedule here that I'm anticipating to target in order to meet the 3-year timelines. So we're looking at, I said, a start date. I have been starting on this, as you see, the terms of reference has started, but the official initiation of the project, I'm looking to begin. So that would be with your direction. And then I'm looking to kind of end the policy review in August, and then anticipate, should everything occur as I would hope and the schedule stays on time, we're looking at a July 2028 final approval of the zoning bylaw by council. Now, TBD for end date of when it's implemented, that's subject to appeals. Then I also would suggest that the schedule is also subject to, changes in provincial planning policy. So it's something that we experience kind of throughout the county official plan review, that kind of at the nth hour, the provincial policy statement was changed. So we needed to ensure that it was kept up to date and changes occurred and some timelines needed to be shifted there. So if something like that were to occur throughout this process, I would just say that the schedule would be subject to those changes. Next slide. And here I have the proposed engagement. So you'll see that I didn't quite lay out engagement as detailed as we could have. And now I would like to say that that's because we want to do an engagement strategy appropriately. So an engagement strategy, if you look on the screen here, it details all the methods and ways in which we can engage the public on this project. So the public participation spectrum is all the way from inform to empower, and there's various methods that we're looking to include in this project. We've been in collaboration with the CAOs who have offered us many helpful insights and ideas on how we can engage the public on this. So we will be considering all of those ideas, as well as the Perth County Community Engagement Framework when creating an engagement strategy for this project. I anticipate for there to be regular check-ins with the steering committee, regular check-ins with members of the public and community groups and stakeholders at each phase of the project. What method that check-in or that engagement looks like is still to be determined, kind of based on budget and timing and what we anticipate to be the best approach for what information we're looking to gain. But I do want to just reiterate that I do really believe that this is an opportunity to start off right with engagement and ensure that we're engaging appropriately and regularly throughout this process. And I think this engagement plan, as I'm proposing, will do just that. Next slide. And that is the summary. So I'm happy to answer any questions as they come up.
Okay, thank you. Huge project, huge. Amanda?
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. I do have a few questions and comments. I'll do my best to try to keep everything concise. So really appreciate the huge undertaking, as the mayor alluded to. This is a big, hefty project. And so couple things. I'll maybe start off with just really trying to understand. So just to confirm, this is all happening through internal resources. This is going to cost the township additional funds. And also just in terms of capacity, like we already alluded to, the fact that we have a lot of planning applications and there's a lot of, things are busy here in the township Perth East, which is a good thing. So just wanted to, make sure and clarify that that is in fact the case, that this is an internal thing. The other comment I have, and I don't think there's anything you can do about it, really and truly, but it was just more so in terms of timelines. And again, I appreciate the fact that you're being really realistic and honest about how long this is going to take. But we will be, there's going to be a new council sworn in before this work is completed. I think the schedule lists 20, we will have an election in 2026 in the fall, and this goes further than that. So I think, would love for it to have been able to be captured all in this term, but it looks like that's not realistic given the scope of the project. And then just specifically, really curious about the white papers and whether that is a provincial requirement, and really wanted to offer some advice and suggestions from my perspective, and maybe to ensure that there's no concerns specifically around the agriculture one, just because this is, again, we've talked about it, is such a the agri-food economy is so big and important to the township. In the past, when we looked at other things, we're looking at official plans and things like that, the farming community was maybe not happy with the way things were. And I just caution and hope that we can, in terms of your engagement strategy, that we make an extra effort, not just to put stuff on social media, but that we're actually doing some very coordinated outreach with those groups. And also these white papers, and again, appreciate the work, and it I just don't want us to do the white papers and it just goes on a shelf. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that this is in fact necessary, or what's that particular component of the project, the need for that, and how long are these white papers going to be? Are they a white paper could be half a dozen pages, or could it be 50 pages? And so I'm a little worried about that in terms of the public and that sort of thing. So I don't know if you can elaborate and touch on I know I touched on a lot of things, so apologies, but I don't know if you can touch on any of those things that I've mentioned.
Sure. So the question regarding is this internal or staff resources, and I guess it kind of alludes to you mentioning, you've seen more of planning and it's great that we're doing these updates. My role specifically is for this type of service is to provide planning policy, ensure that it's updated. It allows for Jeff to manage just the developments, and in having that steering committee, it allows those who are seeing the day-to-day, Wes and Jeff, in providing an overview or overarching view of what's happening, but they're not in the weeds of looking for best practices or nitty-gritty requirements of the Planning Act. They're able to focus on their role, and I'm able to provide this service as part of your existing service agreement. So that's A, why you've been seeing more of me, and B, that kind of what the role is there and how we're trying to alleviate staff and balance staff's roles. The next question regarding the engagement strategy. So I did just start not even a year ago, and I did recognize that there were maybe some gaps that were, there were some gaps in the official plan process and how engagement was undertaken. And I think one of those gaps was that there wasn't an engagement strategy from the get-go. In having such a strategy, we would be able to confirm all the details of, okay, who's posting when, what newspapers are we going to, who's the important stakeholders, what groups are being outreached to, how is that happening? And that, to no fault of anyone's own, it's, everything you learn from, we were able to learn from that process that this is needed and is something that we should consider. If you do refer to the detailed scope of work in the report, there are some specific kind of engagement sessions there. So a learning thing or a learning item that we had was the one-on-one planner office hours. So that was successful in the official plan. So we're anticipating that to be similarly successful in the zoning bylaw. Also, there's, various committees and, groups that I'm maybe not as familiar with, but that's why we have the steering committee, or is why I'm bringing it before yourselves. So you can say that there's these important groups that need to be reached out to that, maybe I'm just not aware of at this time. Timing wise, the very realistic concern, I'm not gonna be, glossing over that. The 3 years is a requirement of the Planning Act, and that is what we're trying to meet. Now I'm hopeful that I think this is possible. The schedule I have before you, it's something that I've done before, I have experience with. It's, I think, a realistic schedule. Now, in also understanding how engagement needs to occur throughout this process, there are just naturally going to be time lags, recognizing that over Christmas or March break or over the summer isn't great for people who have kids who are maybe not wanting to talk about a zoning bylaw during those times. And then we have, when are farmers planting, when are farmers harvesting, like those seasons also don't line up with people who have summers off or kids who are out of school. So ensuring that when we are doing engagement, it is not just at, one time when people are on the fields or people are on summer vacation or they're on March break. It's gonna try to touch on all the schedules that we need to consider, and also recognizing that there will be an election during this process. Now, I've also taken that into consideration, and I'm hopeful that the way that I have aligned the background research is also in alignment with when a new council should be elected. So not that the input during those phases isn't important, but it is that generalized phase where it's more based on what currently is, not what is to come. So it'll allow this council to provide feedback into the initial stages, and then it will also allow the next council to provide feedback into the phase 2. So I've tried my best to consider kind of all the schedules and all the timelines that are required to be considered. But at the end of the day, I have targeted that 3-year mark because of the Planning Act. I think that answered all of the questions.
Sorry, just one more.
Oh.
It was just regarding the white papers and if that
white
is
papers,
a provincial requirement, and what's like, how do you anticipate the scope of that specifically?
Thank you.
Okay.
The white papers, they are not a provincial requirement. So if you look at the Planning Act, the only requirements of undertaking a zoning bylaw review is to undertake a review and host a public meeting. Nothing else. That's the kind of the bare minimum. The white papers come from best practices and what we've seen works best in giving staff an opportunity to address all the items that need to be addressed. And I've done my best to break them out. You'll see in other municipalities, and I previously worked in consulting, and the last zoning bylaw I did was in the city of Guelph. You'll see they did one whole large background paper. It included the phase 1 policy review and the white papers that you referenced, and it was 375 pages long. So in an effort to reduce the length of a paper and break it out into sections that, you know, maybe a developer only cares about the residential one. So then they would only have to look at this specific white paper, whereas someone in the agricultural community would only care about the agricultural paper. So they would just be able to look at that one. And instead of looking at, you know, 350 pages, they're maybe looking at 75. Now, I know that 75 is lengthy, and I don't have an exact page limit or number that we're targeting here. And the only reason I say that is it really depends on what is identified as an issue. You know, maybe there is no issues. Okay, so the paper is 1 page and says everything's great. I tried to generalize it as best possible so that it leaves room for the steering committee, for different people that were engaging throughout this process to provide their input. But I just don't know the exact length and details of it until we get to that stage. But some things that I anticipate it to be, you know, looked into. It is detailed kind of in a summary here. I'll read, you know, agriculture. So the identified items that would need to be looked into are just what we've discussed with staff already. So that's, you know, creating a rural residential zone. That's not actually doing it, it's looking into it. We've seen that it works in other areas. Is it beneficial for here? You know, there's the issue with surplus farm dwelling severances. Would such a zone assist in alleviating the size of surplus farm dwelling severances that we're seeing? It's just a lot of research and best practice and seeing what's best suited. So it's a whole lot of everything you can think of that is considered an issue by staff would be filtered into that 1 paper. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Okay, other questions of the report? If not, we have a motion. The Township of Perth East Council received a report dated March 4, 2025, entitled Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw Review Terms of Reference, submitted by the County of Perth Planning Department for information, and that Council endorsed the scope of work included within the report entitled Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw Review Terms of Reference, and that Council direct County Planning staff to begin the comprehensive review of the Perth East Zoning Bylaw number 30-1999 on behalf of the Township of Perth East, affecting all areas within the Township of Perth East. Moved by Amanda, second by Hugh. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Moira.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We have no reports from the CAO, nothing from the clerk, nothing from finance. Under Public Works, we have our tender results for dust suppressants. So Jake, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mayor Eggets. The report tonight is the tender results for the annual calcium application. We received 3 bids again this year, the same 3 that have historically submitted. The low bid this year is Pollard's. And perhaps if there are any questions around the equivalency ratio, I'll try and speak to those now. Basically, what we're trying to do, there's different products that are submitted for use. We're trying to be able to compare apples to apples. The equivalency ratio is based on the amount of effective chlorides that each product has within it. So they've actually got to submit laboratory analyses with the bids so that it's clear to us what the product is and how far it can go. So that's why the equivalent unit rate per liter was the value that was used for comparison's sake. And Pollard's, again, was the low, and it should be able to be done within the budget allotment. If there are any questions, I'll try and answer those.
Okay, thanks, Jake. Any questions of the report? Seeing none, we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report entitled Tender Results, Dust Suppressant, Supply and Apply, PUB-2025-04, dated March 4, 2025, prepared by the Manager of Public Works and Parks for information, and further that confirmed by this resolution, tender PW-2025-02, dust suppressant, supply and apply be awarded to Pollard Distribution, Inc. for the unit price of 0.139 cents per liter, excluding HST. Moved by Jerry, second by Jeremy. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Jake. Okay, we have no reports from building, none from Parks and Recreation and Community Services, nothing from fire. We have no correspondence. Council and committee reports. Does anyone have a committee that they've sat on since our last meeting and wish to speak about it? No? Okay. We do have my meeting logs from January and February, where I was for those 2 months. Any questions? If not, we have a motion to accept the mayor's meeting logs as presented. Moved by Hugh, second by Amanda. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Council reports, verbal or written updates from members who sit on boards or committees. Nope. Okay, then we go to bylaws. We have first, second, third, and final reading. We have 2 bylaws for that. We have bylaw zoning, bylaw 201-2025, a housekeeping amendment, and that was item 7.1.1 tonight. And the second one is bylaw 13-2025 to exempt from part lot control, part Ramsey Street, plan 331, 44R 5058. Part 3, it's 2177 Andrew Street, Shakespeare, and that was item 8.1.1, and this is for first, second, third, and final reading. Moved by Bob, second by Andrew. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we're down to just where you want. Other business, the chickens. Oh, notice of motion, sorry, skipped the one. Anyone have a notice of motion? Nope. Okay, then other business. Andrew, do you want to speak to this?
Sure, thank you, Mary. I'm fine with leaving it so we can put it on the next agenda. I'm just saying I don't think we should wait. It's up to you guys. I don't want to be called out of order. It is out of order. So if you want to go ahead, then I'll put it on there. If someone wants to call me order, that's fine. So anyway, yeah, if we could get staff to come back with a backyard chicken bylaw. I'm looking at the City of Kitchener one, seems pretty comprehensive. We can do what we need to do with it once we bring back the draft. It looks like a lot of the work's been done here. I know everybody's busy, but like the counselor beside me had said, there's a lot going on, and I've gotten calls, and we're either going to ban them or find a way to control it a little bit, I think. So that'll be my motion. Staff, direct staff to bring back a backyard chicken draft, backyard chicken bylaw for council review.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Oh, sure. Okay.
So thanks, Andrew. So just a little bit of background to tie it together. So in November of 2023, we had brought forward a report for backyard chickens. So the direction at that time was to look into the official plan and the Perth East zoning bylaw. And then the second part of that is that there will be no licensing of backyard chickens. So now that the official plan is underway being changed and the zoning bylaw was changed tonight, that's what Mike was referring to, in that there's no restrictions then for backyard chickens. So if I could recommend maybe the motion be to direct staff to revisit the November 2023 report. That report had included some options already that reference Kitchener and other places that do license chickens. So maybe just going back to that report and bringing forward other recommendations.
I'm fine with that, I think.
Okay, so we have a motion then that council directs.
Site there, they also associate a fee with that. I just think it's, you know, there is some work there, me and my fees, but I just recommend there be a fee associated with it.
Okay, so this is what the motion is, that council directs staff to revisit the report entitled Backyard Chickens of 2023-09 dated November 7th, 2023, prepared by the municipal clerk. So staff will bring a report back in conjunction with that.
I just have a clarity question on scope, because I know chickens is very topical, and that's what we've sort of what we're honing in on. But if I understand correctly from the conversations we had earlier tonight, is that it doesn't just include chickens; it includes all livestock. So somebody could have sheep in their backyard grazing, and so if this is just a suggestion for the mover making the motion, that we might need to look at that in its entirety, but maybe I misunderstood that. So I'm just putting that to ensure that, given the housekeeping pieces that were talked about tonight, that we're really, you know, maybe that needs to be separated out. But I just wanted to bring that forward, just so that that is perhaps addressed, and maybe I'm incorrect in my understanding, but that's what I thought I heard earlier tonight.
It's too bad. Wes, do you know the answer?
Know the answer or not, but you're right. There's an animal control bylaw, an exotic pet. There's different aspects of controlling animals. So yeah, we'd have to come back and see what exactly the other bylaws pick up, and how the specific mention of chickens will be regulated. I think the only interest really right now seems to be with chickens, but I do understand what you're saying. If it's something that's not covered under the animal control bylaw, maybe now's the time to look at that as well. So.
And the only thing it brought back in.
Yeah, I'd like to keep the motion to the chickens. We'll dispense with that. Hopefully, I know my wife would be happy if she could have a donkey in the backyard. She's already married to one. But I think that we have this situation that's occurring right now. We need to focus on the chickens. So that's will remain the motion that I'd like to present. So we
Okay,
can
so
dispense
that's what the
some.
motion is. So are you moving it? Okay, and I need a seconder. You? Okay, any more comments or questions? Yep.
Just so council's aware of this as well, most of you probably know this, but just so it's clear. So the zoning bylaw was approved tonight, but there's still an appeal period. So it's not that people can go have backyard chickens tomorrow or even before our next council meeting or the council meeting after that. There is still the notice that needs to be sent out, and then an appeal period. Once the appeal period's passed, then the zoning bylaw revisions come into effect. So just so everyone is aware, there still can't be chickens tomorrow.
So we'll be well ahead of it then. Great, thank you.
Okay, any more questions? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, any announcements? Nope. Okay, we do have a need for a closed session. We have a motion to go into close. We have a motion that regular meeting of council of the Township of Perth East be temporarily adjourned at 9:08 to permit the holding of a meeting in closed session for the purpose of number one, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Number two, labor relations or employee negotiations. And number three, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Jerry, second by Hugh. All in favor? Carried. Okay, thanks everyone else. Enjoy the rest of your night.